Great to see everybody. My name is Joe Ziolkowski, CEO and founder of Relm Insurance. You might have noticed our very understated booth directly behind us here. If anybody has any questions, come find us. But it's actually fantastic to be here at Space-Comm for a second year in a row. We've had already on day one a really great cross-section of interactions with companies we currently insure, trading partners, investors, and students. And no offense to most of you in this room, but to me, the most energizing conversations I have at these conferences are with the students. Understanding their energy and the projects that they're working on is really fascinating. The other thing that I think I get a kick out of coming to this type of a conference is the idea that we attend industry conferences all the time, and we insure companies outside of space, right? But we attend these other industry conferences. Everyone's always talking about launching a product or a service, but when you come to a conference like this, you get to talk to people who are literally launching products and solutions into space. So I think that's always a great perspective. And speaking of launch, one of the things that I want to talk to you guys about today is the evolving role of risk and insurance in the evolution and maturity of the new space economy. And when you think about a launch in particular, right, every one of these launches begins with the same countdown sequence, right? 10, 9, 8, 7, right? And in those last few seconds, you have hundreds of millions of dollars and oftentimes billions of dollars, years of engineering, reputations, national ambitions that are all sitting on top of what is ultimately controlled combustion. And I think the uncomfortable truth is the fact that innovation isn't fragile because engineers lack brilliance. Innovation is fragile because risk compounds faster than optimism. And space is such a perfect example of this phenomenon, right? I mean, one failure can erase years of hard work and investment. One satellite anomaly can collapse a revenue model. One regulatory shift can freeze capital. And yet, when you look at the resilience and optimism of companies building in space, they keep pushing. And that's possible because of something that is, I would say, less visible, but equally as important as something like propulsion, right? And that's risk architecture. And embedded within risk architecture is, of course, insurance. Now, I think we can all agree, to people outside of the insurance industry, insurance gets kind of a bad rap. I think in the best case scenarios, it's taken for granted, but most people look at insurance as paperwork, or a regulatory requirement, or something you buy after you build. But the reality is, in frontier industries like space, insurance is far more than just a backstop, right? It's a signal. And in a day and age where everybody wants to talk about red flags, if you are operating a business in space, and you're pushing the boundaries of innovation with your products and solutions, and you're properly insured, well, that's a green flag, right? That's a mechanism that is turning your business from something that might work into something that becomes investable, right? And when you think about the signal, right, it's a signal to capital markets that this company understands its risks. It's a signal to partners that this company can withstand volatility. It's a signal to your customers that you can depend on us, on me, on the team. And innovation without that signal, right, without that green flag of evolving risk perspective, oftentimes will stall in the prototype phase. But innovation with an evolving risk framework, that's the stuff that industry scale is based on, right? And at Relm, as a specialty insurer providing support to companies pushing the boundaries of innovation across a variety of sectors globally, we see companies operating across the space ecosystem, the digital asset ecosystem, artificial intelligence. And certainly each one of these industries is distinct relative to the others, but they actually have a common thread, right? A common denominator, and that's the fact that they are moving faster than traditional risk frameworks can comprehend. When you think about traditional risk models, right? They're calibrated to literally be backwards looking. They ask the question, what has happened? It's an aggregation of historical data. But companies operating in these new frontier industry sectors like space, it's a question of what will happen, or what could happen, or what hasn't happened before, right? And that kind of dislocation creates tension. And over time, that tension ends up separating the companies that will grow and the companies that will perhaps dramatically disappear. When you look at the role of risk management for space, right? The modern role of risk management. And me and my colleagues here, we could talk to you about the role of risk management in space until your eyes water, right? We won't do that to you. But at the end of the day, it's entering into the equation three really important things, especially for companies that are earlier stage or in the growth phase. And the first thing is an evolved approach to risk management is going to force clarity, right? The process itself sharpens governance. It sharpens engineering discipline, operational resilience. It also helps absorb shocks. In an industry like space, failure is inevitable. Right? So the question isn't, will something go wrong? The question is, when it does, will you survive? And insurance has a remarkable ability to turn existential risks into managed volatility. Another critical thing that it does is it unlocks engagement, I think, in an unexpected way. If you think about insurance and risk management, investors require it. Regulators require it. Enterprise customers require it. Launch providers require it. And oftentimes, the ability to secure requisite insurance coverage is the thing that enables commercial contracts to be executed, right? So insurance isn't just a backstop. It's an enabling function that puts companies in a position to execute incrementally on critical milestones toward scale. Now, I think the other thing that we have to acknowledge is space is entering a new phase, right? With the enhanced commercialization and privatization, we're seeing constellations scale more rapidly. We're seeing a deepening of public and private partnerships. We're seeing defense integration accelerating. We're seeing new jurisdictions moving into the space economy. We're seeing capital markets focus more on selection. And inevitably, all of this is going to bring an increased focus and magnification over risk, right? And the companies that will succeed are going to be the companies that aren't the fastest or the boldest. It's going to be the companies that can move forward with an evolved risk framework. Now, you can look at an adjacent industry like, let's say, the blockchain ecosystem, which has been hyperbolic, right, over the last 15 years in the sense that it's experienced high highs and low lows. And when you look at the companies that have survived those ups and downs today, those are the companies that have really operated with a focus on building a risk architecture that will put them in a position of sustainability over time. And in space and other frontier industries, it's similar. Frontier technologies over time will mature, and time has a remarkable ability of separating vision from durability. So I think when you think about the role insurance should be playing, right? Perhaps in the insurance industry, maybe we do it wrong, right? Oftentimes insurance is a function of fear, right? It's a fear-driven purchase. If you don't have insurance, this could happen. But the reality is, it should be a source of confidence, right? It should be a component that enables entrepreneurs to swing harder and further because the downside is better understood. It should be the thing that enables investors to deploy more capital because volatility is buffered. And so, when we look at the future of space and we consider, the idea of orbital manufacturing, right, or lunar missions, or regolith mining, or sovereign constellations, or autonomous defense systems, the question isn't what can we build? The question should be, what can we build that will endure? And endurance requires confidence, and confidence requires structure, and structure requires risk architecture, right? And this is where I think the role of modern insurance is most important, right? It's not a brake on innovation. It's part of the foundation that will enable it to scale. Thank you.